Hi, it's your psycho buddy. EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprogramming, is an imaginal exposure therapy, which means that you think about an experience that was very difficult, and then you let your mind kind of play like a movie. You let your thoughts wander and go. And then the therapist will stop you, and some therapists want you to put it into words, and other therapists can work with you without you putting it into words, which is my preference because when the memory is very difficult, having to say it can make it more intense. The therapist will give you, a good one, will give you tools to contain the negative energy, that the negativity that comes from thinking about really traumatic experiences. The way that EMDR works, it started with eye movement, and from one side of the visual field to the other, which activates one hemisphere of the brain and then the other. You know, the brain is like a pecan, and it has that little bit of pecan meat that holds the two edges of it, to two sides of it together. In the brain, that's called the corpus callosum. And when you remember something, if you have a distributed cortical activation, distributed brain function, from here all the way over to here, back and forth, then it can re-encode the memory to be episodic rather than traumatic. So a traumatic memory is one where when you remember it, it reactivates the limbic system. It reactivates all the emotions and fear that you felt when you went through the original trauma. So like a flashback. An episodic memory is just, oh, I was in Fort Lauderdale on the beach when I was raped, right? So you can remember it without being like, oh God, and everything acting up again. There's a new way now. Instead of just doing eye movement desensitization and reprogramming, they do bilateral stimulation with these little things that like tremble in your hands, one side and the other, or you can do it with auditory. Dun, 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 dun. But it's possible to do it over Zoom. And another one that I've used is going side to side to do it. So there are different ways to do the bilateral stimulation. My experience with EMDR has been amazingly positive. Sometimes, with some practitioners, it has been very powerful. It matters a lot, the skill and the style of the therapist you're working with. But when I worked with a skilled one, holy shit, my life changed on a dime. I had been using for 20 years to deal with the intensity of emotion and the depression and suicidality. I had been using drugs, and I had never told my therapist because I didn't want them telling me not to. And I did the first couple of days of EMDR therapy. We worked on tools to contain the negativity. But then the first day we worked on something challenging. I don't even remember what the beginning of the sequence was, but she said, okay, begin at the, sight of your dad really angry or something like that. And then I let my brain wander, kind of like a lucid dream. And then at the end of this, like 10 or 15 seconds or however long it was, with my eyes closed, I was looking up at the night sky, and the dark clouds parted, and I could see a universe of stars in a bunch of different colors, like red and green and blue and yellow and white, the way that they are in like a NASA photo. And I had just the thought, maybe in order to motivate yourself, you don't have to take the belt and force yourself to do something. Maybe there's another way. And that was all the insight that I needed. Something clicked open because I had been wanting to stop use, but I couldn't because I couldn't get myself to even try because I'd tried and failed so many times. And I didn't want to prove my weakness to myself by trying again. But I had always tried alone. And I had always tried by shaming myself into doing it, even though using was like the thing that felt safe in my world. And when I had that realization that maybe there's a different way, that other than having to force myself into doing something, I realized that motivation is like, instead of being one thing, like one arrow you shoot from one place to its destination, it's like an array of what's called vectors. A vector is like an arrow, and it has a place that it starts, it has a direction that it goes, it has an amplitude that is how far it goes, it has a velocity that is how fast it goes. Motivation is like that, and you can recruit it from all these different sources, and then they all add up, and that gets you to the trigger point, whether or not you, the action potential, whether or not you can do the thing, right? So from motivation to action, you can recruit all these different motivations, right? All these different inspirations and impetus for action is how I think of it. And when I realized that, the next day I stopped using. And the next day was 9/29/20. It was the first day I went to a 12-step meeting, and I've been clean since. EMDR is amazing. I recommend it.